story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Hello, I'm Gamatisa Mandida for the Hours News. First, South Africa. South Africa, in partnership with the African Union, hosted the G20 Africa High-Level Dialogue in Addis Ababa to address debt sustainability, cost of capital and financing reforms. Deputy Minister Alvin Boutes highlighted Africa's $1.8 trillion debt burden, stressing the need for fairer credit ratings, low risk premiums and improved access to affordable capital.
Today's dialogue, therefore, is both timely and urgent. It addresses one of our foremost priorities, ensuring debt sustainability for low-income countries. The policy space, ladies and gentlemen, available to developing countries today is indeed significantly constrained by the debt servicing obligations. For an example, the public debt of African countries in 2022 stood at $1.8 trillion, an increase of 183% since 2010, with many of the African countries paying more for debt costs than critical development enablers such as delivery of social welfare, healthcare, and education. We are therefore working to ensure that the sovereign credit rating agencies are increasingly more fairer and more transparent, and simultaneously, ladies and gentlemen, addressing high-risk premiums.
The dialogue supports South Africa's G20 presidency priorities of solidarity, equality, sustainability and inclusive growth. A G20 Africa expert panel provides strategic advice to advance Africa's development agenda.
When South Africa took over the G20 presidency last year, amidst a precarious geopolitical climate, its response was that the world indeed needs more solidarity, increase equality, and enhance sustainability, which became the core of our thematic approach. Ladies and gentlemen, the key typology of our team speaks about African philosophy of Ubuntu, which resonates with the slogan of Agenda 2030 and related SDGs, namely leaving no one behind.
These initiatives aim to ensure Africa's economic and developmental priorities are integrated into the G20 and global governance framework. Botswana's President Duma Boko delivered his first State of the Nation address, SONA, in Gaborone, setting out his government's roadmap for economic recovery, job creation and social transformation. Speaking before Parliament and the nation, President Boko reaffirmed his administration's commitment to good governance, accountability and equitable development. He emphasized that Botswana's future depends on diversifying the economy beyond diamonds, investing in innovation, agriculture and renewable energy, and empowering young people to be agents of change. The time has come for Botswana to build a more inclusive economy, one that leaves no citizen behind, President Boko declared, pledging to strengthen social safety nets and improve access to education and health care. He also underscored the importance of tackling unemployment, corruption and climate challenges, noting that sustainable development requires both national unity and regional cooperation. The address marked a defining moment for President Boko's administration as it seeks to steer Botswana toward a more resilient and self-reliant future. The 2025 Conference on Land Policy in Africa has opened in Addis Ababa. The African Union Commission (AOC) has emphasized that land governance in Africa is not merely a technical issue but the foundation of social justice, economic transformation and peace across the continent. In his opening remarks, Ambassador Amr Al-Joli, African Union Commission Citizens and Diaspora Director, emphasized that land governance transcends mere technicalities. It is foundational to social justice, sustainable development and peace. Land governance in Africa is not a simple technical matter, he said, adding it is the very architecture of social justice, economic transformation and peace.
The CLPA has become an enduring intellectual and policy platform, a space where Africa convenes not merely to discuss land, but to interrogate how justice, sovereignty and sustainability intersect on this most fundamental of resources. This conference, its enduring relevance, reflects a truth we can no longer overlook, which is land governance in Africa is not simply a technical matter, it is the very architecture of social justice, economic transformation and peace.
UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the ECA, Clever Gatiti, highlighted the role of the African Land Policy Center in promoting evidence-based land management and inclusive policies. Gatiti articulated the pressing challenges facing Africa, such as economic instability, climate change and geopolitical shifts.
Land governance, justice and reparations are not questions of the past. They are imperatives for Africa's renewal and the restoration of fairness in global systems. More than just geography, land represents sovereignty, identity and security. It anchors livelihoods, underpins food systems and defines belonging.
This is Africa, the cradle of humanity, the frontier of the future, a land of visionaries, creators and pioneers, a continent of unstoppable energy where innovation meets tradition, where voices rise, loud and fearless.
I am an African.
This is the heartbeat of a billion people, diverse, bold, united by a single purpose to tell our own stories in our own way. No borders, no barriers, no filters. A new era of African storytelling is here. From every corner of the continent, from the bustling cities to the quiet village, we tell Africa's story by Africans for the world. This is the land of a rising Africa, where Africa speaks and the world listens. This is why today we bring you POA, Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
The International University of Rabat, UIR, through its UNESCO chair, has launched the 2025 edition of the World Heritage Volunteers Program in Rabat, running from November 10 to 20. The initiative, supported by UNESCO, Morocco's Ministry of Culture and local heritage agencies, aims to make cultural heritage more accessible, inclusive and engaging for communities. UIR highlighted that the program reflects its commitment to digital pedagogy and sustainable heritage preservation. The United Nations Support Mission in Libya, UNSMIL, launched a digital platform for Libyan youth aiming to strengthen their participation in the country's structured dialogue process. The platform, announced by the UN mission in Libya on its official Facebook page, targets young women and men aged 18 to 35 residing in Libya, enabling them to express their views and opinions on key issues discussed in the dialogue, thereby supporting the efforts of youth directly participating in this political process. Subscribers to the platform will have the opportunity to share their perspectives with members of the structured dialogue, ensuring that youth voices from across Libya are heard in political decision-making. The youth in Libya are not only the country's future, but also its present. Hannah Titek, UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Libya, said in the statement. She added that they are the most affected by the current political crisis and the greatest beneficiaries of a peaceful transition that allows them to elect leaders of their choice. Moving to business news, the East African Community EAC posted robust trade growth in the second quarter of 2025, with total trade rising 28.4% to $38.2 billion, up from $29.7 billion a year earlier, according to the latest East African Community Quarterly Statistics Bulletin. Exports led the growth, jumping 40.5% to $18.6 billion amid rising global demand for East African products. Imports increased 18.8% to $19.6 billion, narrowing the trade deficit from $3.2 billion to $0.9 billion. Trade within Africa expanded strongly, with commerce with other African nations rising 42.9% to $9.3 billion, while intra-East African Community trade grew 24.5% to $4.6 billion, representing 12.1% of the total trade. China, the UAE, South Africa and Singapore remained top destinations for EAC exports, which were dominated by copper, precious metals, coffee, tea, mineral fuels and oils. Key imports included petroleum products, machinery, vehicles and iron and steel. This growth underscores the region's resilience and expanding competitiveness in global markets, while highlighting the need to address inflationary pressures for sustainable economic progress. The United Arab Emirates will invest $6.5 billion in Angola through 44 strategic agreements designed to boost economic growth, strengthen trade and enhance diplomatic ties between the two nations. Angolan ambassador to the UAE, Julio Maiato, described the partnership as one of the most dynamic and strategically significant along the Africa Gulf corridor. The agreements cover key sectors including renewable energy, agriculture and infrastructure. Mazda is leading solar energy projects to diversify Angola's power sources. Infrastructure projects with AD Ports Group and DP World are set to modernize Angola's ports and logistics network, boosting trade connectivity, generating thousands of jobs and supporting regional economic integration. Maito emphasized that Angola's ongoing economic reforms, including diversification beyond oil and strengthening of non-oil sectors, have created a favorable environment for UAE investment, which in turn accelerates sustainable development and shared prosperity. Sports. Ghana's long-awaited national sports policy will be completed and adopted by the end of the first quarter of 2026, Minister for Sports and Recreation Kofi Adams said. Adams explained that the delay in finalizing the document stemmed from internal realignment within the ministry, particularly the decision to formally include recreation as part of its core mandate. Recreation has become a major consideration, so we need to properly integrate it into the final document, he said. The policy, once adopted, will provide a comprehensive framework for the development, management and promotion of sports and recreation across Ghana, aiming to ensure sustainability and clear direction in the sector. Adams also revealed that President John Dramani Mahama has directed the establishment of two overseas sports development in basic and secondary schools. Morocco. Moroccan sports leader Bouchra Hajij, president of the African Volleyball Confederation CAVB and vice president of both the International and Arab Volleyball Federations, has been named among the 50 most influential African women's sports for 2025. The recognition, announced by the Africa Sports Ventures Group ASVG, honors women transforming the continent's sport landscape through leadership, innovation and advocacy. Hajij was recognized for her major contributions to African volleyball development and for championing women's representation in sports leadership. The 2025 list also includes global figures such as Kirsty Coventry, Fatema Samora and Claire Akamanzi. Next, let's take a look at the latest weather forecast. That's it for the hour. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for more news and updates. Goodbye for now.
The Africa we want.
Centuries-old African artifacts housed in European institutions and valued at billions of dollars should be returned to their rightful owners. This call for restitution is growing louder across Africa as the continent confronts historical injustices that continue to impact its people and cultures. Throughout history, social and economic injustices in Africa have led to the loss of valuable human resources and cultural wealth. Today, the quest for justice and reparations for Africa's painful history is gaining significant momentum. From the depths of the transatlantic slave trade to the scars left by colonialism and the ongoing effects of neo-colonial exploitation, the call for reparative justice resonates louder than ever. As leaders, scholars and activists unite, the need for stronger legal and institutional frameworks to support reparations has never been more urgent. President John Dramani Mahama of Ghana explained the gravity of these historical crimes.
The transatlantic slave trade was one of the most heinous crimes against humanity, spanning about 400 years and forcibly displacing more than 12.5 million Africans. It is estimated that at least 2 million of our compatriots perished during the Middle Passage alone. The legacy of this brutal system, along with colonialism, apartheid, genocide, and neo-colonial exploitation, have left deep and enduring scars on the fabric of our societies. Today, the descendants of enslaved Africans continue to face economic disparities, social inequality, systemic discrimination, and racial prejudices. Addressing these challenges require more than just acknowledging them. It demands action.
Speaking at the Accra Reparations Conference, President Mahama emphasized the need for a comprehensive approach to reparative justice. This includes financial compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, and most importantly, guarantees to prevent future injustices. In November 2023, the Accra Reparations Conference took a pivotal step forward by bringing together African leaders, scholars, and diaspora representatives to lay the groundwork for stronger advocacy and policy frameworks that support reparations for Africa. At the 38th African Union Summit, leaders officially endorsed the theme for 2025, Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. This theme captures the collective aspirations of African nations to ensure that justice is done for those whose lives were ravaged by slavery, colonization, and systemic racial discrimination. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia stressed at this year's summit that the demand for reparations is not about charity or financial aid. It's a call for justice.
The demand for reparations is not about charity or financial aid. It is a call for justice. It seeks to restore the dignity of millions and heal the deep scars of poverty, inequality, and discrimination. It demands an end to the systematic exploitation of our wealth, resources, and opportunities. It also calls for a transformative process that acknowledges past harms and takes bold steps to right the wrongs caused upon us, upon society across the continent.
Professor Hakim Adi, a British historian specializing in African affairs, offered his insight on the return of cultural artifacts.
So many artifacts stolen from various African countries, effectively simply looted, and they all need to be returned. And African countries would be much stronger in those demands for the return of stolen cultural artifacts if they united under the auspices of the AU and as a continent demanded the return of these artifacts. So that is certainly the kind of repair that could be undertaken by the AU if it was minded to take that action.
Artifacts looted during colonial conquests are painful reminders of Africa's exploitation. These priceless cultural items have been scattered across museums and private collections worldwide. As the economic value of these artifacts has skyrocketed, so too has the resistance to their return. Robin Walker, Vice President of the Global Black Center and a prominent historian, emphasized the importance of returning African artifacts.
Artifacts are assets. Assets go up in value. And if you've got artifacts that were made 500 years ago, they have been appreciating in value over 500 years. That's why they're now worth millions. And if you've got several artifacts from a particular civilization, you are sitting on billions. Getting those artifacts back is a struggle because they are holding on to wealth. We at the Global Black Center believe that these artifacts should be brought back.
Cultural heritage and the call for reparations are inseparable. For centuries, African heritage has been misappropriated, and the return of stolen artifacts is not merely about recovering lost treasures. It's about restoring dignity and identity to Africa. Experts like Professor Hakim Adi and Robin Walker stress the need for Pan-African solidarity to address this issue, advocating for a unified policy to return cultural assets rather than relying on disparate national efforts. Leonard Philip, an international financial crime complaints consultant and African studies scholar, also emphasized the need for a unified voice from Africa and its diaspora.
The unifying on Africa is key, is a key strategy for us to approach these matters with one voice, and us coming together with one African unified voice and saying, listen, these are our artifacts, these are our art, be repatriated to Africa, individual African countries.
The African Union Summit represents a critical opportunity to advocate for the return of Africa's stolen cultural treasures, address systemic discrimination, and ensure that reparative justice is realized on a global scale. As African leaders convened to discuss justice, healing and restoration, the international community took note. Desta Mego, a reparations expert at the Diaspora Africa Forum, underscored the importance of the 38th African Union Summit held in February 2025 as a key platform for advancing the reparations agenda.
The African Union 38th Summit has decided that this year's theme is the focus on reparatory justice and racial healing under justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. And this mouthful of a theme includes the return of artifacts that were stolen, looted, whether during the act of slavery, which was a crime against humanity. One of the worst crimes against humanity is the transatlantic slave trade, or whether it was done in the commission of wars or invasions or occupation. Having a framework that is continental gives us more power, more strength to be able to lobby and access what is ours and change policies.
Reparations encompass a broader and more profound agenda than financial compensation. They seek to heal Africa from the historical traumas of the past while addressing the contemporary injustices that continue to affect the continent. Professor Azra Aaron, founder of the Center for Global Africa in the USA, and former African Union chairperson Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, agreed on the need to correct historical injustices.
Reparations is not just a simple thing of receiving payments. It occurs on a lot of different levels. And so the self-reparative things that we could do as Africa and the diaspora, the Center for Global Africa, we're doing those things in alignment with the mission of APRM to evaluate governance, the socio-economic performance of nations, make recommendations, and then see how we can work together in transformative ways.
We need to correct the historic injustices. It's not about individuals getting money, but it's about correcting historic injustices. That's why I'm saying it's important for us to discuss how and what are we going to present.
From economic exploitation to climate justice, the reparations agenda calls for comprehensive redress, a future where Africa's development is no longer held back by the burdens of its history. Zambian Foreign Minister Mulambo Hambe shared his view on the importance of reparations.
The theme of this year's summit is very, very important. It speaks to the issue of reparation, which has become a topical issue across the world. How do those that caused injustice across the many years of our development as a continent get to repair the damage that they've done? Very important conversation, which I think we must have as candidly as possible on the continent and, of course, beyond.
The movement for reparations is at a turning point. As Africa's leaders unite for justice, the world must recognize that reparations are not a choice, they are a necessity. It is time for the world to confront the deep, enduring wounds of Africa's past and begin the long overdue process of reconciliation and restoration. Together, Africa can rise, reclaim its heritage, and ensure that the injustices of the past are finally addressed.
The Africa we want. The Africa we want.